Hello, everyone. I'm super happy to have a really cool, innovative, fairly new online program for kids to learn, world schooler kids to learn and keep up with all their awesome learning in their head. And, of course, we're out there in the world learning stuff, but sometimes there's things that, especially if you want to go to university, are good to keep up with and excel at. So I'm really glad to have the founders of Cicero Learning with me. We have Paul Bennett and Lani Bevacqua, who have been traveling via sailboat for most of the past 10 years with their three girls. They have sailed most of the way around the world. Incredible. Not just world schooling, but boat schooling along the way. And so I'm super happy to have them here with us. Let me just tell you a little bit more about them. They started hiring online teachers to help build an individualized curricula around each of their girls' personal goals and to tutor them or teach them one-on-one via one-on-one lessons. And then this, I guess the problem and the solution that they found for their kids, it developed into a new venture called Cicero Learning, which offers a classical education model adapted to a modern world, a nomadic world. And so it's a one-on-one personalized school for digital nomad world schooling families, homeschoolers, and students for whom traditional school isn't working. So welcome, Lani and Paul. How are you guys doing today?
We're good.
We're great. Thanks, Liz.
Super glad to have you. And you are zooming in right now from New York City, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're on land.
Yes.
Not normally where you find us.
Yeah, I know we had talked about the date for the interview, and it would be cool to have you on when you're on your sailboat. But sometimes I don't know. I have a 12-week program, and I have different topics every week. So this week works for talking about hiring nannies, tutors, teachers, whether online or in person. I had a panel discussion yesterday with a couple different experienced world school families, and they shared their information about hiring nannies, especially, but also some private teachers and tutors. So I'm really glad to have you guys here to kind of continue that conversation. So can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and a little bit about what you were both doing before you started off in this adventurous sailing world schooling lifestyle?
Sure. You want me to?
Yeah, go for it. You kick off.
Let's see. So we used to own a business called Context Travel. That was our previous business, and we ran that from land with our three children when they were small, and our kids were in just a private school in Philadelphia. And when they were, I guess, going into 6th grade, 4th grade, and kindergarten, we decided we wanted to try something different and sail and travel and get them out of mainstream American life. So we figured out how to run our business as we traveled, and then we figured out how to homeschool our kids while we traveled. So that's how we began this all of 10 years ago, and began thinking that we would be gone for just a year or two and wanted our kids to seamlessly fit back into their schooling, their private school that they were going to. So we set about talking to all the teachers and the directors of the school. What are they going to need to know if they're with us, schooling with us for 1 year, 2 years? How can they get back into that? So we weren't interested in just getting an off-the-shelf kind of a program. We wanted some freedom to tie the learning into the places we were going, tie the learning into the marine environment, to teach them about the sailing and the oceans, and then also meet the needs of the school so that they knew they would be keeping up with their peers if they wanted to go back to that school. So that required us doing things a little more eclectically and independently. So we hired individual teachers, we created our own book lists, and worked closely with the teachers that we were hiring to make sure that they were covering the right topics and incorporating the learning in their lives.
And this is what you did initially, or you kind of evolved into it?
Definitely evolved into it.
Yeah.
So we probably made many more mistakes than we had home runs as homeschoolers, world schoolers, or boat schoolers.
Yeah.
So we felt our way, and it was really, at least for me, was kind of a light went off when we hired our first private teacher. I mean, our first experience with it was actually more of a tutoring model. So we had a teacher that we were working with, and they were helping, you know, to support a math curriculum in that specific case when the kids were young. But then flash forward a number of years when they were older, right? So middle school and high school. Then we kind of shifted gears and we began hiring teachers to design courses for our kids and then lead them, personalized courses. And that was a complete game changer. The first one that we did delivered results like far beyond our expectations. Our daughter, we did it with one daughter, and she just, the rapport and the relationship that she developed with that teacher was off the chart. So then we were like, okay, that's what we're going to do much more extensively. So now our youngest is doing 4 out of her 6 classes this way, with a private teacher for each individual course who designs that course for her.
Yeah.
The other
And our
classes are group courses, or you said there's 6?
Each course is that, so that we're talking about Jade in this case, our youngest daughter, who's a 9th grader, right, a rising 10th grader now. All of her courses, except for one, are one-to-one. So it's her and the teacher's designed the course to Jade. So around her learning style, her interests, with input from us, right? So we want Jade to have the option to go to college. So we're ensuring that she's got core academics, you know, covered. One of her courses this fall is a hybrid pod. So the way that's working is that she's doing 2 live sessions each week with a teacher. One live session is one-on-one, and the other is with another student and the teacher. So there's 2 students doing this hybrid pod simultaneously.
Okay, great. Let's back up a little bit. Remind me again the age of your girls when you started sailing and this lifestyle, and how old are they now? It's been 10 years, you said, right?
Yeah. So when we started, our youngest was 5, and then we had an 8 and a 10-year-old.
Okay, and so your 2 oldest are either launched or in university or what have you, right? We'll get into that in a little bit. I'm trying to do things a little bit chronologically.
Okay.
So, and you've already answered some of the questions that I was going to ask you. Why did you, well, let's back up a little. Why did you feel like you had the need to hire private teachers versus homeschooling them yourself versus an online school with group, you know, sessions versus unschooling versus, you know, visiting schools around the world? I mean, it's kind of hard when you're on a sailboat, but what was the reason for the private teachers?
So we experimented with a lot of that stuff. I mean, having the 3 kids meant that, you know, our youngest, we tried Calvert with her for a year or 2, which is like school in a box, which worked well before internet had arrived on boats, really. You know, we had to really do everything on paper. So that solved that problem. But it wasn't inspiring. She was really plodding through that, like the
Checking things off lists.
The disassociation with the teacher, the disassociation with the school, with any other students. I mean, she was, you know, kudos to her. She was super motivated and sat down and checked everything off every day. But I could see the joy kind of draining out of her face.
And this was was not the online version, it was the paper version, you said.
Paper version, because we didn't have reliable enough internet.
Yeah. So old school, that makes sense. And you have a big enough boat to carry it. It's hard as a, you know, world schooler going on airplanes to take lots of books and workbooks and all that. Okay, so she tried that, and then what? And then,
I mean, the other girls, we tried a bunch of different things. We tried some online versions where there were recorded classes versus some live classes with lots of other students in both scenarios. And then homework that could be emailed in and returned, graded, and, you know, that kind of model. We tried teaching them ourselves when they were younger. I did a bunch of classes where I got the materials and scheduled the workshops and, you know, got them involved myself. And it was all kind of hit or miss. Yeah. With different things. I mean, you know, we had some good luck, I think, with doing book club type things with them ourselves, right? We would all read a book and we'd have some thought questions. But outside of that, it was super hard to do things that were less desirable to them. Let's put it that way, right? That, you know, they weren't really that excited to do math class with us.
Yeah, when we tried to be the teachers, I would say, you know, everything that we tried had pros and cons, right? So the asynchronous stuff was great because we were living in a lifestyle where asynchronous, you know, worked really well, and you know, but it lacked the relationship with a human, right? The rapport that you get when a teacher is inspiring you and teaching you how to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
And then in the group classes, there was a teacher, so there was a little bit of that. But a fundamental problem with group classes, and this is a problem in traditional schools that's exacerbated on Zoom, is the number of students, right? Once you get above 3 or 4 students, the ability to connect, right? By definition, the teacher has to pitch to the mean. So if you're below or above or not, you know, somewhere off that mean, which inevitably there's, you know, a U-shape in every class, you have 20 students on Zoom, there's a whole class of students who are just not connecting with that teacher.
And the teacher can't read it as well, right? Like the kids can they can hide it really easily, and the teacher has no idea what's going on in the kid's mind. Anyway, that was our experience with the online group stuff. Our kids, you could see them just like zoning out in those Zoom classes.
So some of it was good and some was bad, but none of it was exceptional.
Yeah.
Right. Until we hired a private teacher, and it was just like clear as day. It was like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah. The thing that we really missed, that we really like regretted from pulling our kids out, you know, it was absolutely fine to say goodbye to the school itself, like pull them out and let go of school, but letting go of those teachers, like some of those teachers had this magical aura about them that my kids just really lit up around, and having that other adults in their lives that they could look up to and learn from and be inspired by it, like the loss of that was really hard and sad. And when we started with this teacher that we knew from our previous lives and that we knew from our previous school and brought her in, and to see that spark again in our kids light up. I mean, we can all think of a teacher that we've had in our lives who really were transformative to us and made such a difference in us. And I wanted my kids to have that even when they were homeschooling.
Right. Yeah, I experienced the group dynamic versus one-on-one with my kids. Again, one of my girls has ADHD, and so I used to work for an online school, global school, and she would just zone out. And it was weeks before the teacher recognized that and, you know, told someone, and I was notified. But then later on, my other daughter, we figured out that for her to improve her Spanish, because we were traveling a lot in Latin America, and she was soaking it in and really learning vocabulary, but really not the grammar. So I hired a private teacher to kind of go through all the basics to get her to an intermediate level. And when we were in Buenos Aires, and we could have met her in person because we were there, but Gabby preferred online. And one day Gabby was really tired, and the teacher noticed that right away. And so she, they struggled through the class, and she even said to her, during it, but she sent me a message right away saying, Gabby seems a little off today. Maybe we should change the time for her class to later when she's a little bit more awake. And yeah, with that one-on-one, she was able to do that. And you're right. I think the connection that, some teachers and students have together is really amazing. So you started trying this on your own. You hired the first teacher, then the second, then third. So let us know how that progressed into it becoming a new venture for you, a new business. I know you're entrepreneurs, you had a travel business, and why did you decide that this idea working for you could work for other people? And why did you decide that you wanted to support other families in this way?
So, I mean, like everybody, so much changed in our lives around the pandemic. So all of a sudden, we who felt like we were just feeling our way through this and inventing things as we went, all of a sudden we started getting this influx of people calling us saying, my kid's school is closed, my kid's school went online. All of a sudden I realized my kid is really far behind in this or that, or I need to supplement, or my kid doesn't want to go back, or I can't send my kid back because of their health issues. And you've done this, help us. Like, how can we do this? So we were just doing our best to try to support our own network of friends and the people that we knew, because we may have been some of the only homeschoolers that they had access to, and they're asking us for some tips. So we started by just sending links and making connections, and we were hearing the same from the other side as well. So teachers who were like, look, I've got a health issue. My school wants me back in person. I can't go. Like, if you have kids out there who need remote teaching, sign me up. And so we were hearing it kind of from both sides, from teachers that we had worked with, teachers that our kids had been with in schools, and from parents who were struggling with their kids who were not able to do online or hybrid or stuff like that. And we realized, like, this is a huge need. There's a lot of kids, more and more homeschoolers every year. Paul knows the numbers about how homeschooling has just skyrocketed for nomadic families a lot, but also just for parents who realized after COVID, like, my kid is not succeeding and I didn't realize it.
And at that moment, the people who knew us, they could see our experience, right? So here we are on a boat in the middle of nowhere. We were anchored in Sumatra during the pandemic, and our kids were on an academic rocket ship. Right? I mean, they were just, at this point, we were 3 years into this, really hardcore into this private teacher one-on-one model. And they could see, my oldest daughter applied and got into college, and they could see what was going on. They were like, wait a minute, what are you guys doing that's like supporting your kids academically, social, emotional development? And we began describing this model, and they were like, can you help us out? So Cicero was born out of that.
Amazing. So you started off on your own circle of friends and then expanded from there. Why did you choose to focus on the one-on-one teaching model versus group classes? Like, what are the benefits of that?
Yeah, so we didn't know this at the time. We were just sort of experiencing it with our kids because we were inventing it. We didn't have other kids to kind of, join up with in pods. But there's a lot of research on this topic. There's one study in particular, a seminal study from the 1980s by a researcher named Benjamin Bloom at the University of Chicago, where he looked at one-to-one learning versus group learning. And basically produced a study that shows that the results are 2 standard deviations higher for one-to-one, meaning you learn twice as fast, twice as much when you're working one-to-one. And there's a lot of reasons for this: the student-teacher rapport, the amount of content, whatever, the personalization. But basically, one-to-one is a complete and utter game changer academically. So if you're just thinking about the academic success and the love of learning and everything that you're trying to accomplish with school, it's super clear that one-to-one is totally in a different paradigm from what we're used to. The one thing missing is collaborative work, the social, like working together on a project. So what we're trying to do is find a compromise with these hybrid pods. So there is some mix, and we're eclectic homeschoolers. So we're all about the a la carte mixing of, take a bit of this, take a bit of that, and build a school plan that's right sized to the student, fits the family, and then makes sense for their future if it's university, which is the path that our kids have.
Yeah. As Cicero has been growing and there's more kids joining, we're seeing that there are kids who are basically learning the same subject matter, coming to the end, working on projects, and the teachers are happy to bring 2 kids together to work on a final project together, and seeing the joy in the kids, like at first being a little hesitant, like, how much do you know? How much do I know? How are we going to work together? And then like seeing how that like just sparks them, and they get so excited to see another kid excited about what they're excited about. It's compounding it. So it's kind of getting the best of both worlds, where they get the teacher one-on-one, and then they also can like see enough of how to collaborate with another kid in a subject that they're interested in.
Yeah, we had a great example of that this spring, where we had 2 kids who were taking biology with 2 separate teachers. But they're both Cicero teachers. We have a Slack channel, and all the teachers are talking all the time. We're sharing information. And then these 2 teachers realized, wait, we have 2 students who are at the same level, kind of covering the same, let's do a project together. And they brought them together. And as a group, the 4 of them collaborated on building the project. It wasn't like the teacher said, hey guys, do this, you're going to work together. They came together and the classes morphed into a pod, basically organically. And we saw that and we're like, okay, this is the thing we want to add in.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, collaboration is one of the 4 main 21st century skills: collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and communication. And that was, again, one of my questions. You keep answering the questions I'm going about, like, one thing missing is the socialization, the collaboration, the connection with other learners in the group. So what type of families would be a good fit? You're talking about homeschoolers, world schoolers. Who is your target? Elaborate a little bit more about that. What kind of families are coming to you, or what kind of families are you trying to reach out to?
I mean, obviously world schoolers, right? We are world schoolers. I mean, we're a certain stripe, we're boat schoolers, but we're world schoolers, and world schoolers have a certain set of problems that they need to solve for, right? They need portable school that can go with them wherever they are. And that's core to what we do.
Flexibility in time.
Yeah, flexibility, right? So we have world schoolers who are like, oh, I'm going to be in Bali for the next few months. Can we change the meeting time of this? And our customers are all over the globe, and our teachers are all over the globe. And so whether that means moving from one teacher to another because of time zones, or if it just means that teacher, scheduling things, it's 100% flexible, 100% portable, and it's completely personalized, which I think is another, interesting trend here, right? We like, everything in our lives these days is personalized. Your phone is personalized, your car is personalized, but education's not, right? You walk into a school and it's one size fits all.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense, right? We're talking about learners here, and every learner is different and they have their own learning style. And so the real sort of, golden chalice in this model is our ability to tune that course and that entire educational experience to that, not only to the student, but also to her context, right? Her family, like, what are her family's goals? Like, what do they want to emphasize? Are they college track? Are they not? Are they, whole child, student centered? Are they more rigorous? Do they want to take AP classes? Do they want to do the Cambridge? Like, we can do all of that stuff and really gear it to the entire family and that student.
And the curriculum. Like, what sense does it make to take a culture studies class that's off the shelf US history if the kid is spending the year in Southeast Asia?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, I can't understand why anyone would do that. Not to be critical.
I agree. That's the problem with the Bach curriculum. We haven't mentioned what age or grades that you handle. It's mostly for middle school and high school, right? So what's the age range for people who have different terminology for those years?
So we have some primary aged kids. We have we have a couple of 8-year-olds this year, and 10-year-olds. And we've done great work with them, writing classes, math classes, and some other more creative things. Did a script writing class with a 10-year-old this year, which was super fun. But our sweet spot are core academics for middle schoolers and high schoolers.
12, 13 years and
up, all the way up through graduation. Our girls graduated from Cicero. We do AP courses now. We help build a college transcript with families. So, we're great for those kinds of customers.
Okay, awesome. So let's talk a little bit more about the topics or the courses that you have. You mentioned a lot of academic stuff, some AP things. Do you have enrichment classes? So kind of give us an overview of what you offer right now.
Well, so core academics, like I said before, so all the maths, all the sciences, all the social sciences, English language arts. We do most languages, French, Spanish, Latin. We have a great Latin teacher. But we also have a whole bunch of enrichment or elective courses that I absolutely love. And many of these are very academic courses, but they look a lot more like what you would find in college than you would find in a high school. For example, we have a student doing a cognitive science class this fall. We have a teacher who offers a course in tea, the economics and gastronomy of tea. He used to be the tea buyer for Starbucks and lived in China for a long time. Yeah, and he totally builds the curriculum to that student where they are. So if you're in China, then he'll build, field trips and things like this around tea. We have we have a teacher who does a Latin American study course. And go ahead.
Can a family come to you and say, my kid is into this esoteric topic, and would you be able to find a teacher to create a program for them?
100%. Yeah, that's our sweet spot. The more the stronger the family's opinion, the better.
Okay, awesome. You call Cicero a school on your website. So it's more than one-on-one tutoring, and it's more teaching versus tutoring. Tutoring is more helping a student with something from a regular school, I'm guessing, right? Whereas your teachers are actually teaching the whole course and very personalized. So for me, I envision a school, the word school being group learning. But how do you see Cicero as a school?
We see it as a school because we can provide the entire solution, right? So every course that you do is a la carte. You could come in and say, look, I just want to do, a pre-calculus course with Cicero. Find me a private teacher to do that. And I'm going to go do my other courses here and there. But we also have families who come in and say, look, we want to do all 5 or 6 core academic courses and maybe some enrichment with Cicero. We have a couple of families who are all in. And we are working with those families, whether they're one course or not, on their entire school plan. So we want to, help out where we can on building a transcript, understanding if you take this course, then it scaffolds to this course, which scaffold, what is your, objective and goal? So in that way, we think of ourselves as a school, and we're also getting accredited, right? So we're in the accreditation process.
My next question.
I knew that was going to be your next question.
I'm really good at this.
Yeah, you are. I know. You don't even need me. Just give a presentation. Yeah. So how do you get accredited? Is there a certain, because I know at least in the US, a lot of the accreditation is regional, because in the US, the education is kind of done by each state, and then there's regional accreditation. And sometimes the accreditation companies want you to kind of fit into a box a little. So I'm wondering how that's working for you guys.
Accreditation has evolved pretty significantly in the last 5 years. So first of all, the regional model no longer exists. There's been tremendous consolidation into a couple of different umbrellas that have brought those regional bodies together. There are a bunch of accreditation schemes that are very focused on online learning and remote learning. So they're open to that. And they're also a lot less sort of top-down dogmatic about curriculum, and much more about understanding how the organization is set up with controls and checks and balances to ensure that enough people are thinking about the student and his or her problem that she's trying to solve, and not just sort of, selling snakes.
Which accreditation company do you think you'll go with?
We're going to get accredited with Cognia. That's what we're already in the process.
That's great. Yeah, I think I interviewed Prisma, and then who else is accredited with them? There's a few others. I also interviewed the Sora, which is, project-based learning. I feel like Sora and you guys would make a good partnership, maybe, because, they may or may not cover all the things, and maybe there's certain subjects that a student really would benefit from one-on-one focus with a teacher. So I'm guessing you guys have courses, students can pick and choose from them depending on what their goals are. And they can do one course or a bunch of them, right? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it'd be useful to kind of describe what the process is for when a family kind of knocks on our door.
That's going to be another question.
Okay. So, we have a whole bunch of courses on the site, but of course we can build any course around any, interest. And we have a whole bunch of teachers who are actively teaching with us, but we also have a network where we can recruit in the right teacher for the issue. Basically what happens is a student or a parent will reach out to us, and we get on a 30-minute call to figure out what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What hole do you need to fill? And are you traveling? Are you not traveling? We have a lot of worldschoolers, but we also have a lot of homeschoolers. We have a lot of people who are leaving education. So they're brand new to stepping out of brick and mortar. So we sit down for half an hour with the parents first and just make a profile. What is it that you need to get accomplished here? Is it a single course or a whole series of courses? And then we put together a match, a couple of different teachers that we think fit that profile, right? So is there neurodiversity? Is there, whatever issue? And we have teachers who are certified and experienced with neurodiversity and others who aren't. Is it project-based learning? Is it in situ? Do you want something geared to where you're going to be? And we have a pretty broad and talented network of global teachers who can do a lot of different things. So we figure out who the matches are. We put those matches in front of the parents. At some point, we then interview the student to figure out, like, once we're on the right path, like, in the student's words, what do he or she want to get out of this experience? And then we fine tune that match. Once we come up with a match around a course and it's fully described and the family's up for it, then we do a meet and greet. So that's a 1-hour session. It's kind of like a mini class where the teacher meets the students and vice versa, and they build a kind of collaborative plan for the course. So the teacher has sort of a framework in mind of like what's going to get accomplished in terms of the amount of the content that's going to be delivered in the course, and different types of assessments and deliverables. But it's a rough plan that doesn't become fully articulated until the teacher meets the student, and then becomes iterated week to week to week. So a lot of our courses are what we call emergent courses, meaning there's an idea at the beginning, but it's once the student and the teacher start working together, then that path. So a great example of this is a reading list. So in an English language arts class, the teacher will start the class being like, here's 5 books that I think we should read in this class in order to accomplish these goals. But after the first book, the teacher may say, based on how you reacted to this, I think we should switch out and do something else. Or the student may come and say, I would prefer to do, graphic novels, for example. We had a student who halfway through the class, they were like, I really want to study graphic novels. And suddenly, there goes the class, tailored to, again, personalized to that student. So the curriculum is emergent in that way.
When my kids were new readers, they love the graphic novels. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about teachers, and somebody in the chat is asking about pricing tuition. I'm going to ask that too. But I first wanted to back up a little bit and kind of talk more about the philosophy. You mentioned on your website, you have a classical education model. So why do you choose that versus, like Sora, when I interviewed them, they're like, oh, we're totally reinventing it and, looking towards the future, not a more classical education model. Is the reason why you're doing that to prepare kids for university, for standardized tests, because there's certain things on these tests, which I know are going away, but a lot of universities still look at these kind of classic education subjects. Why are you focused on that right now? And supplementing, I know you have the enrichment classes.
So by classical, I think we're using that term in a different way. So we're using it as a traditionally classical, as in like Greek and Roman education model, where private tutors were the norm for us, for the educated class. So when we say classical,
not the subjects, it's
right.
The mode of delivery.
Yeah, we don't mean like standardized testing classical. We mean like of a classical era,
like Aristotle and Alexander the Great.
Right.
Basically.
Right. Okay,
so that's what we mean by a classical model of having a highly educated tutor hired for a child.
Right.
That used to be live in person, living with living with the family. But now we've adapted it using Zoom and using a super, our teachers that we bring on board are almost all coming through a project-based education model, progressive education model, certainly child-centered education. So we are definitely not looking at a standardized format. We offer AP classes for kids who feel like they really want that for their transcript for college applications. We also do some Cambridge type A-level classes, IGCSE as well. But that's in response to the need of the family.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Yeah, I need to do a presentation for my group on the history of education. And yes, the Greek and Roman times, it was the aristocracy who had the private tutors and teachers. And then there weren't a lot of schools back then unless it was religious, like they were going to become clergy, parts of the clergy, or the elites had them. People had governesses and tutors, private tutors. But it wasn't until, and then there was schools for people who were entering the military. That existed, but then it wasn't, education and schooling didn't become mass until the Industrial Revolution, and it was to create, obedient and, efficient factory workers, and then eventually office workers. And it worked really well for a while, but now with the internet, it's kind of outdated. So I need to do that presentation a little bit more elaborately than that. But I do love how you have the classical tutoring, one-on-one teaching. So let's talk about the teachers. So how do you find them and how do you vet them?
Well, so Lonnie mentioned at the outset, we had this is actually our third business. Our first business was a travel business that had very similar dynamics to this business, where we had what we call intellectually curious travelers, people who love to learn, and they were going on holiday. And then we matched them with local PhD experts in cities around the world. That business, which was called Context, grew up into about 60 cities today. We're still involved. We sit on the board of that business. But anyhow, one of the problems that we had to solve in that business was finding those local PhD experts. Who were they? And we got really good at it. We found them through local study abroad programs, universities, chat rooms, and then once that network got to a certain size, the network begat a network through connections. We're basically building that same playbook in Cicero. So we already have about 50 teachers that we've recruited through our own personal networks, through the networks of Context, and then we have a way of finding those teachers where they live, whether they're on chat rooms, Facebook groups, people who are leaving the profession. And then now we're even getting to the point where we're getting a lot of teachers coming through referrals from other teachers, people who've come in, they've taught a class, and said, oh, teachers love it. It ends up,
teaching one-on-one is really rewarding for the teacher.
One thing that drives great teachers is the connection with students. And one of the things they hate about traditional school, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of teachers leave public school and go to private schools, because they cut their class size in half. So they go from 25 to 12, and that's a great improvement. But when they go from 12 to 2 or 1, it's a whole nother experience for them. They love it. So that's what we use to bring them in.
And are they typically certified teachers, again, coming from the public or private school system, or are they experts in the field, or both?
They're both. So we have people who've got teaching certificates. One of the things that we look for is teaching experience, right? So if they're, like the guy I mentioned who's the buyer for tea at Starbucks, right? He's also a teacher. He's taught for many years a Latin American course, and he teaches Spanish as well. So he has experience in front of students, packaging up content and assisting in their learning.
Yeah, I would imagine, you want them to have the right personality to be with kids, because it's not enough to be a PhD in something and super knowledgeable, but it's like, if you're droning on and not very friendly, that would probably be a problem.
Yeah. And that was the same problem we had to solve in Context. The last thing we could do was put a boring PhD who had no teaching passion and ability on a 3-hour tour with travelers.
So when you have new teachers join you, do you try them out? Do they need to be trained to teach in a different way with Cicero?
We sort of recruit them. There's a couple of hurdles they have to pass. So they have to have a lot of teaching experience. They generally have to have a kind of progressive mindset, project-based learning, student-centered. And you can sort of see this from their track record. And then they go through a pretty extensive interview process where they do a mock class for us, and we understand sort of what their teaching philosophy is and how they teach. And then, and once they do a mock class, then we'll match them. And then we have a weekly pulse check that goes out. So the teacher, a student, and the parent every week get a survey, and it varies week to week. So it's different questions all the time, but like, how are you feeling about this course? And one of our key questions that we ask the student, parent, and the teacher and ourselves is this student getting traction? It's kind of a core principle at Cicero. And if you think about it, traction is the opposite of distraction, right? Mm-hmm. So traction means like you're engaged as a learner, you're excited, you're inspired, and you're making progress to some goal. Now, like, does that goal mean like you're going to get 100 on the test? Like, okay, yes, assessments is one way to know, but there's a deeper level where and a good teacher knows that a student's getting traction, and an engaged student knows that they're getting traction. And so every week this survey goes out to measure, is that student getting traction? Is it on or off? And the moment it's starting to go off and they're not getting traction, then there's a conversation to be had with the student, the teacher, and the family of like, okay, well, how are we going to get this back on course?
Awesome. You mentioned that you have about 50 teachers currently.
Yeah.
Right. And you also mentioned that you may be able to help kids with special needs or learning differences. Can you elaborate that on a little bit? Because I know we're kind of or not running out of time, but I don't want this to go super long. It's fascinating, but let's try to, the next questions, let's try to be brief about it, if you don't mind. So special needs or learning differences.
Yeah, so neurodiversity is one of the things that we recruit for. So we have a whole class of teachers that we've ensured that they have experience and or certification in twice exceptional kids.
Okay, and then how long are the classes? Is there any structure to the courses? Are there a certain number of weeks? Do you do semesters, or do you have a school year? How does that work?
Totally customizable to the family and the student. We have like, there is a kind of core pattern out there of a school year, right? 30, and our school year would be 30 weeks. So a full course over the year would be a 30-week course. Generally, we meet twice a week, live sessions. So that's like 2 hours of live session. And then the teacher will program, 2 to 4 or 5 hours of independent work that happens outside of that class session. That's like our core standard model, but it can change in myriad ways. We have families who come in, they'll do a 7-week course that meets 3 times a week. They'll, more enrichment things. It kind of depends on what the goal is and where you're headed and what's needed for the transcript or what you're trying to do.
Do you offer courses during the summer or? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So I'm guessing this sounds amazing. And my girls want to try out the marine science course with you guys soon. But I'm guessing, because it's not group, it's online, so that helps with costs. But I'm guessing the one-on-one teachers, you're hiring expert, this is not a budget option. So let's talk about pricing and your tuition structure.
Right. So for that, like, core offering, that year-long full workload and eventually full credit course, one-on-one is about $5,500 for the course for the full year.
Like twice a week for 30 weeks.
Yep.
Okay.
And then there's ways to like cut that down, right? So we can do semester-long things, so half the time. You can do half the live sessions. You can customize it in a lot of different ways, and then you can get into a pod situation. And the moment you start podding up with other students, that course starts to really get cut down in terms of price.
So you are looking to having some small pods.
Yeah, we have one currently scheduled for the fall, a chemistry course. In case any of your listeners have sort of 9th, 10th, 11th graders, high school level chemistry, we have a chemistry pod running this fall, and we'll probably have.
I would imagine, again, group synchronous classes are hard to schedule with people all around the world. So that is one. I mean, this is the one beauty of the one-on-one is, super flexible about your time. And if you're crisscrossing the world, that makes sense. Okay, you talked a little bit about how a family enrolls and the onboarding a little bit. Yeah, so I don't know. I put together, I think I mentioned to you, maybe I did, a list of over 30 online tutoring or online teaching companies for the participants of my 12-week course. My 12-week course, the first half is kind of on launching, getting started, logistics, all the travel stuff, getting to a groove. The second half is on education, super in-depth on the top 6 ways, basically, to educate your kids and have them have an awesome education outside of the traditional school system. So there's many different options out there. How do you differentiate from other companies that offer online teaching or tutoring?
That's a good question. I mean, so we don't use the word tutoring because that's usually sort of supplemental. It's like you already have a course and then you're getting a tutor that's helping you out. So that's our big
I
differentiator.
kind of put them both, the teaching and the tutoring, because otherwise my list of online schools is more group.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
how
I
do you
guess
differentiate?
for a school that's one-on-one. Yeah, I mean, for sure, that's the most unique thing about Cicero, is that it's really focused on a teacher and a student. And we do some pod work and some project work that incorporates students working together, but primarily it is a totally customizable, flexible with time, flexible with curriculum, flexible with the support, the books and that you're using to one child.
Yeah, it seems like there's way more support. I mean, the way I look at it, obviously a lot of us know about OutSchool. I did interview a spokesperson for OutSchool, who's also a teacher on the platform, a few weeks ago. And, they claim they're a marketplace. I mean, they use that word. So they're a large mass marketplace. I don't even know how many, they have so many teachers and so many classes on there and students around the world, but it's mostly group. They do have one-on-one options. And so I'm looking at Cicero as a more, I guess, curated version of that. You don't just take any teacher, because I think on OutSchool, as long as you can get a background check from whatever, you live in certain countries, you can do it and that you can try and then you get stars, because OutSchool is not really vetting that much and curating what's offered. And obviously you focus on one-on-one. And OutSchool doesn't personally onboard the family. You just create an account and you just start, put your credit card on there and start. So you guys get to know each student. You're really involved with the teacher. So do you see, you're relatively new, but do you see your concept growing? How many students do you have so far, and what is your goal in the future? Like, let's say 1 year from now or 5 years from now.
Yeah, we had this past year, we had about a dozen families, dozen students that were doing school with us. We're growing slightly this fall, so we'll have a slightly higher number. We'd love to be at 100 students in the next year. And I think this model can support thousands of students.
Okay, awesome. Let me just check to see if we have any other questions. Let's see. Oh yeah. So Bridget's asking about the tuition, which we mentioned, and then we said, was it 5,000 or 5,500? That's for one class for a full year, right? 30 weeks, twice a week, right? It was 5,500. And then she wants to know how much are the pods.
Yeah. So if you did the same type of thing as a pod, testing my knowledge.
Or do you have, are you going to have that
listed?
Are you going to have that listed on your website?
Eventually, yes. But well, actually, I'm not sure because everything is customized, right? So what I gave you was the price for a very typical, need. But we have a lot of people who are paying very different amounts because they're doing something that's customized and different. When you get to a pod, though, yeah, we are going to have formal structures like we have with this chemistry class.
Right.
The chemistry class, I can tell you, so the pod is basically 25% off the one-to-one.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, I could see, I mean, there's a lot of digital nomad families who are just starting out. They don't have the budget for this, but then others who do, mom and dad have great paying jobs. They're nomadic. They really want their kids to have this personalized one-on-one learning. And maybe they just pulled their kid out of a private brick and mortar school that was $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. So, again, there's a market for everyone. All right, so maybe kind of mention some of the world schooling or boat schooling families that you've enrolled. What are they like, and what do they like about Cicero? Oh, sorry, I think my internet might be kind of not so great. Did you hear my last question?
Yeah, you were asking what boat school families like about our model.
Or world school families. Maybe mention some of them, not by name, but like this family has been using us for a while and this is what they use us for.
Okay, well, I mean, a boat schooling family that's been using us is a pretty good example. They've been in a lot of different geographies, right? Been moving around. So they love the flexibility of scheduling. So they were in an East Coast time zone for a while, and now they're in an African time zone. So we've been able to flex around that. They also have a student who is, very unique and unusual as a learner and a personality, and loves hands-on things, building things. Particular, loves video games, but also loves to sort of understand how stuff works. And they just bought a new boat that has an incredibly complicated electrical system. So we built and designed an electrical engineering course for this student. He's a 10th grader. That could, fit their schedule. He also has some health issues, so they had to pause for a short period and then resume. So they were the teacher was able to accommodate the time zone, the pausing, and then build the class around the kid's experience on the boat. So like understanding how that electrical system works. And I actually just heard from the dad recently, and he's like, my son now knows, a little more than I do about this super complicated boat that's driving us crazy. So there's a real world experience example.
Yeah, and then we have another family where the kids are professional athletes and they're traveling around the world for their sport.
Surfers.
Yeah, so they need a lot of flexibility with time because they're moving time zones, but also because seasonally they're competing or they just need to focus 100% on their sport for a week or two. So they need to be able to pause and resume and do intensive work and then pause for long stretches.
So the teacher told me that occasionally she'll get an email, 2 or 3 days ahead saying, hey, can, this Thursday, can we move the class, 3 hours later? Because surf's going to be amazing in the morning.
Super last minute flexible. That's amazing. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I just put the link in the chat for Cicero. Now, I am an alternative education advocate, a world schooling advocate. One of the things I'm doing is helping to get the word out for really innovative education companies out there. So we do have a deal. If people click on the link or mention Trailblazing Families, they can get a 5% discount off of Cicero. And then I am trying to earn credit from you guys if I get the word out to have my girls take that marine science class. So it's a win-win for everyone. Families don't pay anything extra by clicking that link. You'll get a discount actually. And then it's a win-win-win for all of us. So and then Paul and Lani, if you are in my group, if you want to check later, because people watching the replay may have questions, and also they might want to schedule a meeting with you or whatever. I mean, please check the group later. And then if there's any, social media, Instagram, whatever you want to share, please put that in the chat as well.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
We will.
Yeah, Liz, thanks for all your resources on this subject. I mean, you've really pulled together quite a great comprehensive list of this kind of education
we
stuff.
Send people your way all the time, right? Oh, you want to know about world schooling? Like, we know some, but you should talk to Liz.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, somebody also posted, a new member was posting in the group, actually a comment under the promo post in the newsfeed about you guys. Like, thank you for all these resources. I really love the interviews. Again, maybe not everyone can watch it live, but they may watch the replay. And I just responded, this is my raison d'etre, the ikigai, that Japanese term for, reason for being, or my purpose in life is really to promote the world schooling lifestyle. I do think it's one of the best lifestyles out there. I think raising global citizens, forward thinking, free thinking, global citizens is awesome. And, being able to work online or learn online is just such a game changer. And you don't have to be stuck in a box and living that way. You don't need to be in one place to have stability in your life. People keep asking me that, like, don't your kids need to be in the same town for their whole lives? No. And I think, like, but don't you think it's a disadvantage to stay in your town your whole life? Like, don't you think they're missing out on all the things they can? I try to turn it around when they ask me that question. So anyway, this has been a really great discussion, and hopefully we can have more talks in the future. Lani and Paul, thank you so much, and enjoy New York City. I think I mentioned to you, my girls were born there, and I do miss it sometimes, not all the time because it's kind of big and hectic, but it's great to visit. So thank you so much.
Thanks a
Thanks,
lot,
Liz.
Liz.
Hey, thanks for watching. I'm Lizz Quain. My twins and I have been traveling and world schooling for about 7 years, and I'm happy to share our experiences. Make sure to check out all the other videos on my channel. I have a playlist of interviews of fascinating world school families and service providers who share lots of info and wisdom about world schooling, traveling, and the digital nomad family lifestyle. If you're new to world schooling or have recently launched and are struggling because you're kind of winging it, if you need some help, I do have a super comprehensive 12-week program on how to world school and travel extensively as a family. I share lots of info on travel logistics, where to go, how to find community, how to immerse yourself into local cultures, and the variety of ways to educate your kids while traveling above and beyond homeschooling them yourself, and much, much more. Make sure to watch my free 2-hour masterclass on how to become a world schooling trailblazing family. That is a great way to learn how to get started. I'll include a link in the description with more info. Thanks and happy trails.